The Starr and D'Amico Show brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Back to work Monday. Good to see everybody again. Welcome to the Starr and D'Amico Show. Like and subscribe as always. The march to 20,000 YouTube subscribers begins with each and every single one of you. And a big shout out, of course, to all of our loyal sponsors, including Little Bear at littlebearonline.com in Montreal on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. Chuck and Evie and their all-star staff are prepared to handle all of your pet's needs because they care about your pet as much as you do. And yeah, it's cold out here this week. Snow falling. Time to get your kitty, your dog ready for the winter climate. They have all the best brands at all the best prices from around the world. Marco D'Amico, back to work Monday. I hope you're feeling a little bit better. I know you've been under the weather a little bit, but nothing like a good little conversation about the depth about the Montreal Canadiens, the 2C, to get us started. Let's begin with Michael Hage out of the Big Ten, the University of Michigan, for a team that's doing well. They're 9-2-1 in 12 games. This young man is on 8 goals and 17 points, but if we had a production team, I'd put in like the dramatic music, dun, dun, dun. However, he's been playing on the wing for the last 2 weeks. Que paso? Why is that? He was supposed to be the 2C of the future here.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's always been concerns as to whether or not he would be a winger or a center in the NHL. And, when you look at the way that Michigan is built, they really like the chemistry between him and Pittsburgh Penguins first rounder Will Horkoff. They wanted them together. But unfortunately, Michael Hage was getting caved in on the faceoff circle. He's
Mm,
45% on the year right now. And it's also about bringing in a guy like TJ Hughes, who is a veteran, who isn't afraid to go into the high danger areas. And so that line has been fire for the Michigan Wolverines over the last 2 weeks. And it's not by chance. Unfortunately for Michael Hage, like there is a legitimate question whether or not
mm.
long term in the pros he will be a center. And if you're starting to see those questions now at Michigan, you can't help but wonder, how does that impact, the Canadians' vision for their 2C? Because from what I've heard in the organization, they're not 100% convinced themselves that Michael Hage will be the 2C of the future. I think there's a lot of hope within the fan base that he will become that, but there are a lot of people I've spoken to around the NHL that believe that his game is going to be better suited for the wing at the NHL level.
I remember you and I talking about this a couple of different times over the last, I don't know, it feels like a month or so, and I would bring up, projected rosters for the World Juniors and Team Canada, of which Michael Hage should be a part of that roster. And I mean, the
Yes.
depth down the middle at Canada, right? And they had him on the wing in a couple of projected lineups that I saw, and
Yeah.
it piqued my curiosity. But before we get into like the options, right? If he doesn't project to be, if he isn't, part of the 2C plans, like legitimately, we'll talk about the Kirby Dach, the Oliver Kapanen effect, obviously, right? With both
Hmm.
young men starting to heat up here as the Montreal Canadiens put away the Utah Mammoth. Finally, they did it. They had a third period lead and absolutely buried the Mammoth. Cheers to that. Amen, brother. Um, but does this, I have a couple of questions about this. Does this come as a surprise a little bit? I know you laid the groundwork about the veterans and what Michigan is doing. They're 9-2-1, and the face-off proficiency isn't great for Hage. But
Hmm.
is it a surprise that he's been moved to the wing at all? Because I mean, I think a lot of people that maybe aren't into the weeds like you are when it comes to NC2A, I think this, watching us now, this may come as a surprise to a lot of people.
Yeah, the way I see it with Michael Hage is he projects to be a really talented top six, worst case middle six forward. His story is fantastic. It writes itself in terms of his fandom and playing for his childhood team. So there's a lot going for him. He's put on a lot of weight over the
Mm,
summer, so like he's in better shape. But again, it becomes the same thing. Producing at 5-on-5, right? Like more than half of his points, I think closer to 66% of his points come from the man advantage. That's just not sustainable, especially when the games get tighter. And that's been something that's been used against Michael Hage to say,
interesting.
maybe he's going to wind up on the wing. And that, I mean, look, that's fine. The only reason that there's so much energy and anxiety over where he's going to play at the NHL level is simply because of the scarcity of the position for the Canadians, right? Other than that,
Hmm.
he's not doing anything wrong in his development. He's continuing to grow as an individual. And in my opinion, it's up to the Canadians management team to figure this out now. Like it's if Michael Hage is going to be your top six forward, but he's going to probably wind up on the wings, then they have to figure out something when it comes to the 2C. And I think what this does, because the Canadians did want to see what was going to happen this season with Michael Hage and see like if he would truly develop into, a dominant center. He's looked like a dominant forward, but a dominant center that can carry the puck,
Hmm.
cut into the middle, go to the high danger areas, like what we expect a top six center to do. You're not seeing that right now. So the Canadians are going to have a backup plan. They are, and I think that was the same situation with Noah Dobson last year, where they needed a backup plan in case David Reinbacher didn't pan out as the top pair right shot defenseman. They went out and got their insurance policy, and Noah Dobson takes the pressure right off of David Reinbacher. He can now just develop at his own pace. Well, I think with seeing Michael Hage play on the wing, um, it kind of changes the dynamic. But at the same time, and this is where I want to take it, so too does the performances of Kirby Dach and Oliver Kapanen.
Brandon Naurato is the head coach in Michigan.
Yep.
From
Interview
your
with him coming
understanding,
on Monday
yeah,
today.
I'm looking for you can check it out at rg.org and follow Marco D'Amico on his socials to find the direct link to that at MN D'Amico, right? Um, but Brandon Naurato, former player there, was instrumental in getting Michigan to a couple of Frozen Fours back in his playing days for that Big Ten program. How much communication exists between Canadians management and U of M? Any? Well, I'm just curious about that. Like any, like I know obviously between the NHL and their AHL farm team, there's back and
Yeah,
forth a flow of dialogue. Completely different world. I get that, but I'm just curious.
totally.
Does it extend? Does Ken Hughes or Jeff Gordon kind of poke their nose into U of M and say, "Hey, we'd like to see Hage play on the wing. If you think it's good, we'd like to see it too." I'm just curious about that.
No, no.
Yeah,
They won't necessarily have a conversation with U of M to do anything.
yeah,
You kind of have to let these programs do their thing. They're independent programs. The AHL is different. They own them. So kind of,
yeah,
they're on the
yep.
books. You can make a decision. But when it comes to Michigan, no. Rob Ramage is the head of developmental. He's in conversation with them from time to time. Conversation with Michael Hage on a regular basis. Paul Byron, buddy of yours, also in conversation in that regard, and working
Mm-hmm.
with Michael Hage from time to
Mm-hmm.
time. Or talking to him, generally talking to him. So there's not that much like implicit directives. It's more so much like touch points and seeing what's going on. At a certain point in time, you got to let the kid develop, right? And again, this isn't a Michael Hage video. We're going to get to other things, but
Yeah.
all this to say that he's developing quite nicely, and his chemistry with Will Horkoff has been off the charts. They're probably one of the best duos in the NCAA right now. The only thing is, if he is truly a winger at the next level, the Canadians have to alter their strategy. And I think maybe we move away from the idea that the Canadians need a stopgap and more towards the idea that the Canadians need a long-term solution at 2C. So like maybe Nazem Kadri isn't the answer here. Maybe the Canadians have to wait for a legitimate age-appropriate 2C to become available.
Is that answer already on their active roster? Kirby Dach is a man on fire in November, scored again, big goal, nice goal, good finish, going to the net. I like his involvement with goaltenders. Oliver Kapanen is tied for second on the team with goals. He's on 6. Obviously, Cole Caulfield's got 12. Slav has 6. Kapanen has 6. So let me take it back to that question. Is the answer, as you laid out the groundwork, right? Maybe you're right. Maybe they're not looking for that short band-aid fix, just killing time, waiting for the option to arrive from the NCAA. But I think we see Kirby Dach a little bit differently. You and I like the mold, and when he's engaged in playing, I see 2C. Kapanen, I think in a perfect world on a very deep team is a great scoring touch as a 3C option here. But what's the projection now? How much of a security blanket are either of those young men on the Montreal Canadiens as a viable solution to finally, at long last, Marco, plugging the 2C hole and adding legit depth?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm gonna get tomatoes thrown at me for not being on the Kapanen hype train.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, he's shooting at a 33% shooting clip, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
those goals are it's not sustainable. The average in the NHL is about 12 to 14% in terms of shooting percentage. So he's more than double that. That's that just means he's been good, obviously in the right places at the right time, but there's an element of luck that is getting into that equation that when you look at him, maybe not sustainable. And for those that need any convincing, Jake Evans, remember him last year?
Dude, what about Brendan
35%.
Gallagher last year? Gallagher 2 shooting percentage.
Yeah, but Jake Evans at this time last year had a 35% shooting percentage, and everybody
Yeah.
was willing to throw long-term contract in the high threes, almost 4. I saw fans willing to go to 4.5 million for him. And now fans are complaining about Jake Evans's contract at 2.8 because a regression is normal. That's not sustainable. And I would also add that there is a Demidov rub, right? There
Yeah.
is. I think it's fair to say that
I agree.
Kapanen's goal last on Saturday night does not
Yeah.
happen without Demidov's elite skill, getting that puck to him in such a high danger situation, right? I think Kapanen is a fantastic 200-foot player, strong 3C already as a rookie. But the question has always been, can he create? Because that's really what sets a 2C apart. Like, what can you do to set yourself apart as a 2C? What role can you play? What element can you bring? And I feel like if you were to remove Demidov from the equation,
Yeah.
the answer is strong two-way play and a nose for the net. But you need more layers than that to be a 2C in this league. My 2 cents. And then the same thing applies to Kirby Dach. Kirby Dach, yes, Kirby Dach has 4 goals. Yes, in his last 3 games. But again, those are not necessarily translatable, consistently goal scoring type goals. Like there is an element of luck in there. There is. His goal against Utah was gorgeous, but it speaks to his strength as a stick handler and a one-on-one guy. But in terms of a shooting threat, he is not. And I think that's something to keep into consideration because if this is going to be a contending team, you can't have a band-aid situation. You can't hope. You have to have an established or soon to be established piece in that second line role because Nick Suzuki, I mean, we talked about this on a previous episode. Nick Suzuki should be in contention for the Selke. But the reason he won't is because he's not playing on the penalty kill. Well, the reason he's not playing on the penalty kill is because the penalty kill is the only place that Martin St. Louis is going to give Oliver Kapanen the minutes that he deserves because he's not getting him a 5-on-5 because he's overusing Nick Suzuki, right? So, like, it's a cycle. And that cycle would go away if there was consistent, dependable secondary scoring and two-way play from the rest of his lines. Therein lies the importance of a second line center. So I think that the Canadiens have good pieces in play. And I would even go so far as to say it helps them to acquire a 2C because I don't think you can have both Kirby Dach and Oliver Kapanen on the same team long term to make that work. Eventually, one of them could be used as trade bait so that you can go and get a 2C because you got to give to get. And young right shot centers are probably the most valued commodity in the NHL right now. And the Canadiens have 2 on heaters as we speak.
So that's ultimately what it comes down to then. If I'm reading you right, like it sounds like you're coming across as a law of average guy, right? Because why couldn't the answer to the second line be what Hab fans are watching right now? I should have
If
mentioned
the
Alex.
answer was
Yeah.
any of the players we talked about right now, Martin St. Louis would use them more than 10
Yeah.
minutes, 11
Yeah.
minutes at even strength.
Yeah. But he mentioned, he just to, clap back on that, Saturday afternoon, MSL was talking about, and I appreciate the honesty. I mean, he's not perfect. He admitted as much, talked about how he gets caught up in penalties, how he gets caught up in matchups all the time. And that one of the things MSL admitted he needed to work on was just that, the allotment of ice time. Right. But like New
Yeah.
Hooks on 6 goals, I should have mentioned that, right? Shooting
Yeah.
percentage over 26. Oliver Kapanen, as you point out, 30% shooting percentage through 15 games, right? Demidov's on 13 points and 4 goals and a shooting percentage a smidge over 22. I mean, these 3 guys, I mean, they've been not as good as the first line on a
Mhm.
consistent basis, but the drop off isn't that dramatic. So why couldn't that be the answer to the permanent second line
Because they get caved in at 5-on-5 on a regular basis.
for
Like,
now? For now,
sure, for now.
they're both
Sure.
the 2 rookies.
Absolutely.
There's 2 rookies on that line.
Absolutely. And therein lies the problem,
Mhm.
right? Because offensively, Oliver Kapanen is getting the rub from Ivan Demidov and Alex Newhook right now, right? And power to him to being able to take advantage of that. He's always been a goal scoring C, and that's exactly what he is. But the issue is Martin St. Louis, what he didn't say yesterday is that he falls back into the coach's trope of trusting his veterans. This is the youngest team in the NHL. You
Yeah.
have no other options. You're going to have to put out a 22 or 24-year-old on the ice against the team's top opposition on the road. It's gonna happen. You got to be comfortable with that. So when you're at home and there's only 2 power plays against you, and
Hmm.
Ivan Demidov is playing less than 10 minutes, Oliver Kapanen is playing 10 and a half minutes at even strength, that's problematic, especially when they're playing as much. That goes to show you that that they're even with this performance where he is offensively performing above expectations, above the law of averages, that they're still not there. But, and I stress this, it's a very good problem to have for the Canadians for the future because you're going to need significant quality down the middle for this team to be a contender. In my opinion, the Canadians will be able to choose between one of these two to be their 3C of the future. And then the other one can be utilized in a
Hmm.
trade where their value has peaked. And specifically, I had remembered and I had been told that Kapanen was discussed in summer dialogue with other teams, right? And his performances so far this season have done nothing but improve his value to the organization, to other organizations, etc. I'm not saying he needs to be traded. I'm just bringing up, where the expectation was for him as an asset or is where it is now. And being able to sell high has been a Kent Hughes trademark when it
Yeah.
comes to going out and getting a 2C. So if a team is willing to dangle a legitimate top 6 NHL center and you have to give to get, and fans do not want to move Michael Hage, well, then it's very fortuitous for the Montreal Canadiens that Kirby Dach and Oliver Kapanen are
Mm.
performing the way they are, because I don't think that you could afford to have both of them on your team. Once that 2C is around, because you're not going to bump either of them to the fourth line
Mhm.
role. You just gave Jake Evans a long contract, and you have a boatload of bottom 6 centers that are pushing to make this team as soon as next year.
I guess my final question on this would be, I always like guys that do it at the NHL because they're in the NHL and they're doing it, you know?
Mhm.
Maybe Michael Hage is the guy you put on the lure and toss it into the water and see who bites. Like
Thank you so much, Sean. You're going to get all the tomatoes now.
all I'm saying again, I reaffirm my point. You know,
Look,
Kapanen's doing it in the NHL. He's doing it, and he's doing it at a nice level. Sustainable, I agree, is a valid question to put on the table and discuss about
mhm,
when
mhm,
things average out, what are we dealing with here, right? In terms of
yeah,
building the depth up. But if a guy who many thought was going to be the 2C of the future has played, on the wing for the last 2 weeks for a 9-2-1 Michigan team, I also think that's a valid question to ask about his
Well,
his future.
it's a worthwhile question because you also have to think the Canadians on the wings right now: Cole Caulfield, Uri Slafkovsky, Ivan Demidov, not going anywhere.
Yeah,
Zachary Bolduc is a lock to be a top 9 winger,
agreed.
right?
Yep.
Okay. You have Michael Hage that projects to be a top, middle 6 forward, be it center or wing, likely wing.
Yeah.
And you have Alexander Zhuravsky,
Oh,
right?
oh,
That
stop.
basically lines up your top 9 for the future, right?
Yeah.
But are you not going to want like a physical crash and bang veteran in there? Like the Canadians
Yeah.
want to get
Always.
bigger, right?
Always. Yeah.
So is there is there a surplus if they view Hage as a winger? Is there a surplus on the wing, right? And at that point, is there a decision to be made? And so I'm not on the trade Hage bandwagon. Like I want
No,
fans to be
me
very
either.
clear on this.
Yeah.
But if a bona fide star becomes available, right? I'm looking around, looking in the, like for example, Boston. Boston's trying to trade. Boston trying to trade. I take that back. Boston is considering the possibility of moving Pavel Zacha. Not a chance that Michael Hage would be dangled in a trade like that. But if the Buffalo Sabres ever decide to make a guy like, I don't know, Tage
Say it.
Thompson available,
Yes. Yes.
then
Yes.
with all due respect, with all due respect, give them what they want.
I don't disagree.
Because
Fascinated.
that puts the Canadians in contendership status, right? But again, if you're Buffalo, what would you prefer?
Yeah.
Mike Michael Hage in that's unproven, not playing in the NHL yet,
Hmm.
or some proven talent that's already performing in the NHL that's young and that could help you not rebuild
Yeah.
so hard.
I would go with the latter personally.
I mean, you basically said that before.
Exactly. At
so
least, hey, at
so
least I'm consistent.
exactly, right? Unlike refereeing in the NHL. But
Whoa,
the
whoa.
idea is
Shots fired.
and I'm not even just talking about the Habs here.
Yeah,
Last
yeah,
night was like
yeah.
crazy. But the idea being it would take a mega trade to consider moving a Michael Hage. But if Michael Hage does become a center, it changes the timeline, it changes the strategy for what the Canadians are going to be looking for on the trade
Mhm.
market. It will no longer be a stopgap Ryan O'Reilly style trade,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
going to be looking for something that's going to stick. And, Nazem Kadri can probably give you 3 more good years and it's going to cost you.
Yes.
But are the Canadians looking for a center that's just going to give them 3 more good years and then kick the problem down the road? Like it's not the I think the Canadians now are going to be looking for the exact right opportunity. And in my conversations with those around the NHL, the Canadians have been keeping tabs on certain teams that they feel are going to be changing course
Mhm.
in their journey in the NHL standings, and that is where they may pounce. We'll have more on that this week.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Stay tuned for more on an expanded dialogue on that very topic. And tomorrow on the show, you can look forward to the depth around the Montreal Canadiens, specifically on their blue line. How elite has this group become? And we'll highlight a couple of individuals specifically. Do you like watching this show? How about checking us out live coming up on Monday, November 17th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. live at Maison Publique McLean's. It will be our second live show. It was a resounding success in our debut back in October and very much looking forward to running it back. We have a lot of exciting prizes from Maison Publique McLean's, gift cards there at a great establishment. Friends at Morella's Steakhouse in Ganawage on Highway 132. They're big fans of the show. They're like, here, take a bunch of gift cards, give them away. We guys love what you do, and we want to be a part of that. So we want you to be a part of our live show from Maison Publique McLean's on Peel Street in downtown Montreal, November 17th at 6:30. We'll go right to 7:30. We'll take some viewer Q&A. We're going to have some fun. It'll be on the PA. So make sure you're there for that. Marco D'Amico from RG Media. You can follow him at MN D'Amico. Looking forward to our conversation tomorrow as we talk about scoring defenseman of the elite variety on the Montreal Canadiens. Thanks, Marco.
Have a good one, everybody.